What happens when Hollywood's most composed gentleman finally snaps? Live on television, under the glare of studio lights, rolling cameras, and a question that won't let him finish a sentence. The audience thought they were settling in for a polite conversation. George Clooney. Legendary smile. Calm voice. The kind of guest who makes daytime television feel safe. Predictable. Comfortable. But comfort has a way of cracking when pressure keeps rising, when respect feels chipped away piece by piece, and when the interruption comes one time too many. The theme music faded. Applause filled the studio like a soft wave crashing and pulling back. George Clooney walked out, relaxed shoulders, tailored suit, that familiar half-smile he'd perfected over decades. Joy Behar leaned forward at the table, papers stacked, glasses low on her nose. Whoopi watched calmly. The crowd clapped a little longer than usual. Clooney nodded, grateful, practiced. No one, not the producers, not the audience, not even Clooney himself, knew they were about to witness a moment that would explode across social media within minutes. What happens when a conversation stops being a conversation? The narrator's voice hums beneath the scene. And becomes a confrontation? Before we go any further, if you love explosive celebrity moments like this, subscribe to Talk Flair right now, hit like, and drop a comment immediately because this story only gets more intense from here. Joy Behar smiled first. That familiar grin, part playful, part sharp. George, welcome back, she said, already glancing down at her notes. You've been very vocal lately. I'm happy to be here, Clooney replied warmly, leaning in, hands folded. His tone was calm. Open. Joy jumped in again. About politics, activism, and humanitarian work, Clooney added gently, trying to complete the thought. Joy laughed lightly. Yes, that too, she said, waving her hand as if brushing away a detail. The audience chuckled. Clooney smiled again, but something subtle shifted in his eyes. Not anger. Not yet. Just awareness. He began answering. You know, when you spend time in places where... So let me ask you this, Joy interrupted, turning her head slightly toward the camera. Don't you think celebrities sometimes overestimate their influence? The studio air tightened. Clooney blinked once. He paused, then nodded slowly. I think influence is only meaningful if you listen first, he said carefully. And what I've learned. But isn't it also performative? Joy cut in, faster this time. Like, you say something, people clap, and nothing really changes. A murmur rippled through the audience. Clooney inhaled. Deep. Controlled. He glanced briefly toward Whoopi, who raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. I don't think suffering is performative, Clooney said, voice still level. When you've sat with families who... Joy leaned forward. But you're still speaking from privilege, George. That word landed heavier than the others. Privilege. Clooney's jaw tightened, not visibly, but enough. The smile faded. Not gone. Just thinned. I'm aware of my privilege, he replied. That's exactly why I try to use it responsibly. And if you'd let me finish... Joy interrupted again. But the question is... The audience shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. A producer off-camera glanced at the monitor. Clooney stopped mid-sentence. Silence stretched longer than expected. For the first time, he didn't jump back in politely. He waited. Joy kept talking. Because some people feel celebrities should just act and stay out of. Joy, Clooney said softly but firmly. She continued. Complex global issues they don't fully. Joy, he said again, louder now. The room froze. She looked up. Yes. Clooney leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, eyes locked on hers. His voice didn't rise. That's what made it unsettling. I'm trying to answer your question, he said. But I can't do that if I'm not allowed to finish a sentence. A ripple of applause broke out before anyone could stop it. Joy laughed, defensive. Oh, come on, this is a conversation. No, Clooney replied instantly. A conversation involves listening. The audience reacted audibly now. Gasps mixed with claps. Whoopi shifted in her chair, sensing the shift in gravity. Joy raised her eyebrows. Are you saying I'm not listening? Clooney didn't hesitate. Right now? No, you're not. The tension was no longer subtle. Cameras zoomed tighter. Social media managers in the control room were already typing. This wasn't the polished Clooney people expected. This was something else. Controlled frustration, sharpened by dignity. Joy crossed her arms. I interrupt everyone. And I've noticed, Clooney said. Then quieter, more dangerous. But that doesn't make it respectful. The audience erupted. Applause drowned the studio for a moment. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Clooney continued, his composure cracking just enough to reveal steel underneath. I came here to talk, he said. Not to spar. Not to be reduced to sound bites. Joy leaned in. Well, maybe. That's when it happened. Clooney's voice cut through the studio like a clean break. Don't interrupt me. Silence. No laughter. No applause. Just shock. Joy froze, eyes wide. The audience collectively held its breath. Even Whoopi looked surprised now. Clooney straightened, breathing steady, gaze unwavering. Please, he added quieter. Let me finish. The cameras kept rolling. No one dared cut to commercial. And everyone watching, live and at home, knew they had just crossed a line they couldn't uncross. This was no longer an interview. It was a reckoning. The silence after those 3 words felt heavier than any argument could. Don't interrupt me. They hung in the air, not shouted, not dramatic, just firm. Unmistakable. The kind of sentence that draws a line without raising a voice. For a split second, the studio forgot how to breathe. Joy Behar blinked, her lips parting as if a response would come automatically, the way it always did. But it didn't. Not right away. The audience sat frozen, some leaning forward, others stiff in their seats, unsure whether to clap, gasp, or stay quiet. Even the faint hum of studio equipment felt louder than it should. George Clooney held his posture, shoulders squared, hands resting calmly together. His heart, however, was not calm. Inside, years of carefully measured diplomacy churned. He hadn't planned to say it like that. He hadn't planned to say it at all. But something about being cut off again and again, something about being talked over while trying to explain human suffering, had snapped a wire he usually kept tightly wrapped. Joy finally let out a short laugh, the kind that tried to diffuse tension but only underlined it. Well, she said, tilting her head, this is live television. Clooney nodded once. I'm aware, he replied. That's why words matter. A low murmur rippled through the audience. Someone whispered, oh wow, loud enough to be picked up by a nearby mic. Joy straightened in her chair. You know, George, I've been doing this a long time. Interrupting is part of the format. And I've been listening for a long time. Clooney shot back, still controlled, still calm. That's part of respect. Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward now, palms resting on the table. Okay, she said, trying to ease the tension. Let's slow this down. But the moment had already taken on a life of its own. Joy turned slightly toward Whoopi. I'm just asking tough questions. And I'm trying to give honest answers, Clooney said, his eyes never leaving Joy. But honesty takes more than 5 seconds. The applause came again, louder this time. A few audience members stood before quickly sitting back down, realizing this wasn't that kind of show. Or maybe it had just become exactly that kind of show. Joy inhaled sharply. So you're saying I'm silencing you? I'm saying I feel silenced, Clooney corrected. There's a difference. That distinction hit harder than an accusation. Joy paused, fingers tapping lightly against her notes. For the first time, she seemed unsure whether to push or pivot. The camera cut briefly to Whoopi, whose expression said everything. This was not in the rundown. Joy tried again, her voice edged now with defensiveness. You come on shows like this to make statements. You know interruptions happen. Clooney leaned back slightly, then forward again, voice steady but layered with emotion. I came here because people are hurting, he said. And if that makes you uncomfortable, interrupting me won't make it go away. The room felt smaller, more intimate, like everyone had been pulled into a private argument they weren't supposed to hear. Joy shook her head. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm skeptical. That's fair, Clooney replied. But skepticism shouldn't shut people down. The audience reacted again, some clapping, others murmuring in agreement. Social media feeds were exploding in real time. Clips were already being cut. Captions already written. George Clooney snaps. Joy Behar stunned. Live TV goes off script. Joy's voice hardened. So now you're lecturing me? Clooney's eyes softened just a fraction. No, he said. I'm asking you, as a fellow human. Let me speak. That softness was almost more disarming than anger. For a brief moment, Joy said nothing. She looked at him, not as a guest, not as a celebrity, but as a man sitting across from her, visibly frustrated, visibly trying to stay composed. The silence stretched again. Then Joy exhaled. Okay, she said. Go ahead. Clooney nodded. Once. Grateful, but not triumphant. Thank you. He began again, slower now, choosing every word with care. When you've stood in refugee camps, he said, when you've listened to people who've lost everything, you realize influence isn't about being heard. It's about listening first. And I try to bring those voices into rooms they'd never be allowed into. Joy didn't interrupt. Not yet. The audience leaned in. This was the Clooney they expected, but now sharpened by what had just happened. But when conversations turn into debates about tone instead of substance, he continued, the people who suffer disappear again. Joy nodded slightly, though her expression remained guarded. And that's what frustrates me, Clooney finished. Not criticism, not tough questions, being talked over when the topic deserves more than a sound bite. Another wave of applause rolled through the studio, sustained this time. Joy raised her hand, signaling for quiet. I hear you, she said slowly. But you have to understand. She stopped herself. Corrected course. Go on. Clooney noticed. The audience noticed. Even the control room noticed. But the tension hadn't dissolved. It had simply changed shape. Joy adjusted her glasses. So let me ask this, without interrupting, she added pointedly. Do you ever worry that moments like this, confrontations, become the story instead of the cause? Clooney considered the question. Really considered it. Yes, he said. And that's exactly why I didn't want this to turn into one. The irony hung thick in the air. A producer's voice crackled faintly through an earpiece. Time was running. Commercial break approaching. But no one wanted to cut away now. Joy nodded slowly. Fair enough. But the audience could feel it. This wasn't over. The temperature in the room was still too high. Too charged. Because when live television stops following the script, it doesn't calm down. It escalates. And the hardest part wasn't what had already been said. It was what still hadn't. The applause faded, but the tension didn't leave with it. It lingered, clinging to the air like static after a lightning strike. Everyone could feel it. The audience, the hosts, even George Clooney himself. This wasn't just a disagreement anymore. It was a test of control, of pride, of who would bend and who wouldn't. Joy Behar sat back slightly, hands folded, eyes fixed on Clooney with a look that mixed curiosity and challenge. She had agreed to let him speak, but agreement didn't mean surrender. Not on live television. Not on a show built on sharp exchanges. You know, Joy said, carefully this time, people watching might think you're reacting emotionally. Clooney didn't flinch. I am, he said simply. Because the subject is emotional. A soft wave of murmurs passed through the crowd. Someone nodded vigorously. Someone else crossed their arms, unsure. Joy tilted her head. But emotions can cloud judgment. They can, Clooney replied. They can also clarify it. That landed harder than expected. Joy's lips pressed into a thin line. Whoopi glanced between them, sensing the narrowing space for error. Joy leaned forward again, the edge creeping back into her voice. So if someone disagrees with you, they're clouded? No, Clooney said quickly. If someone refuses to listen, then yes, something's clouding the room. The audience reacted audibly this time. A sharp intake of breath. A scattered clap that quickly died down. Joy raised her eyebrows. That sounds like an accusation. Clooney's jaw tightened again, more visibly now. It's an observation. The difference between the two felt razor thin. Whoopi cleared her throat. All right, let's. Joy lifted her hand slightly, stopping her. No, I want to understand this, she said, eyes locked on Clooney. Because you're telling me how to do my job on my own show. The temperature jumped instantly. Clooney exhaled through his nose, slow, deliberate. I'm not telling you how to do your job, he said. I'm telling you how it feels to be on the other side of it. That hit something deeper. Joy sat back, arms crossing again. I've been on television for decades. I've been interrupted plenty. And did it feel good? Clooney asked. The question cut through the studio like a blade. No sarcasm. No theatrics. Just direct. Joy opened her mouth, then paused. For half a second, she seemed genuinely caught off guard. The audience leaned in, sensing a crack in the armor. Well, she said finally, this isn't about me. But it is, Clooney replied softly. Because conversations are made of people. The audience erupted into applause. Louder, longer, impossible to ignore. Some people stood. Others clapped so hard their hands stung. This wasn't fandom anymore. It was recognition. Joy forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. So now you're turning this into a lesson? Clooney shook his head. No, I'm trying to turn it back into a conversation. Silence fell again, heavier this time. The kind that made producers nervous and hosts sweat. Joy tapped her pen against the table. Let me be very clear, she said. This show challenges guests. That's what we do. And I respect that, Clooney replied. But challenge doesn't require dominance. The word hung there. Dominance. Joy's voice sharpened. Are you saying I'm dominating you? Clooney met her gaze without blinking. In this moment, yes. A collective gasp swept through the audience. Whoopi's eyes widened slightly. Even she hadn't expected that. Joy laughed, but there was no humor in it. Wow, that's not an insult, Clooney added quickly. It's a description. Joy shook her head. You know how this looks, right? Movie star comes on, doesn't like tough questions, tells a woman to stop talking. The accusation was sudden, heavy, and loaded. The audience reacted immediately. Some gasped, some groaned, some whispered. The energy shifted sharply, dangerously. Clooney's expression changed. The calm cracked, not into anger, but into something more wounded. That's not what this is, he said, voice lower now. And you know it. Joy shrugged. That's how it plays. For who? Clooney asked. For you? Or for the clip? That question landed like a punch. The control room froze. This was exactly the kind of line that made headlines. Joy leaned back, eyes narrowing. So now you're accusing us of chasing clicks? I'm accusing the moment of being bigger than the issue, Clooney said. And I don't want that. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Cameras zoomed tighter. Social media notifications were lighting up phones backstage like fireworks. Whoopi finally stepped in, voice firm. All right, enough. We're losing the point. But it was already slipping. Joy turned toward Whoopi. No, I think the point is very clear. Clooney interjected, quieter but intense. The point is people are watching this, and they're learning how we talk to each other. That sentence stopped everything. Joy looked back at him, her expression unreadable now. So, what do you want from me? Clooney didn't hesitate. The same thing I'd give you. Space to finish. Another round of applause, less explosive, more thoughtful. The kind that comes when something uncomfortable, but true has been said. Joy nodded slowly, lips pressed together. Okay, but the damage and the depth were already there. Because live television doesn't forget. And neither does the audience. The confrontation had moved past irritation, past interruption, into something rawer. Ego, respect, power, and the uncomfortable mirror held up in front of millions. And everyone could feel it. This wasn't going to end quietly. Not after this. The show went to commercial only minutes later, but the damage, or the impact, had already been done. When the theme music finally played and the red light blinked off, the studio exhaled like a body releasing held breath after too long underwater. Applause broke out again, scattered and unsure at first, then swelling as people stood, not knowing exactly what they were applauding. Courage, discomfort, honesty, or simply the fact that they had witnessed something real. George Clooney leaned back in his chair, rubbing his hands together slowly, adrenaline still humming beneath his skin. His heart was racing now, not from anger, but from the awareness that he had crossed a line he usually avoided. Joy Behar gathered her papers, her movements sharper than usual, lips pressed tight as producers rushed in with hushed voices and wide eyes. Whoopi stood, placing a hand briefly on the table. All right, folks, she said to the audience, her voice calm but weighted. We're going to reset. But there was no reset. Not really. Backstage, whispers spread faster than footsteps. Assistants checked phones. Producers refreshed feeds. A clip, just 12 seconds long, was already trending. Clooney's voice, steady and unmistakable. Don't interrupt me. Joy glanced at a monitor, her face illuminated by the glow of social media reactions pouring in by the thousands. Some praised her for pushing back. Others accused her of crossing a line. The comments didn't slow down, they multiplied. Clooney stood, adjusting his jacket. A producer approached, hesitant. George, are you okay? He nodded. Yeah, he said quietly. I just hope something useful came out of it. Out in the audience, people buzzed with conversation. Strangers leaned toward each other, replaying moments, debating tone, intention, power. One woman shook her head. I've never seen him like that. A man replied, maybe that's the point. Within minutes of the show ending, headlines began to form. Not carefully researched articles, instant reactions. George Clooney clashes with Joy Behar on live TV. Don't interrupt me. Clooney moment shocks viewers. The View goes off script. Clips spread like wildfire. TikTok stitched reactions. YouTube thumbnails screamed in bold letters. Twitter, now a battlefield, split clean down the middle. One side praised Clooney's composure, calling it a masterclass in setting boundaries. The other accused him of talking down, of hijacking the moment, of making it about himself. Joy Behar released a brief statement later that evening. Measured. Professional. Lively conversations are part of the show, it read. Disagreements happen. We move forward. Clooney didn't release anything. He didn't need to. His silence spoke loudly enough. By nightfall, late-night hosts were already joking about it. Only George Clooney, one said, could say "don't interrupt me" and sound like he's asking for a cup of tea. Laughter followed, but underneath the humor was something else. A recognition that this moment had struck a nerve. Because it wasn't just about George Clooney or Joy Behar. It was about how often people talk instead of listen. About how power shows itself, not just in volume, but in control of space. About what happens when someone known for calm finally draws a boundary in public. The next morning, viewers replayed the clip again. Slower this time. Watching facial expressions. Pauses. The exact second where respect cracked and truth slipped through. Some saw confrontation. Others saw honesty. And maybe that was the real aftermath. Because long after the applause faded and the lights dimmed, one thing remained clear. That moment couldn't be undone. It had already lived 1,000 lives online, reshaped by opinions, captions, and commentary. But at its core, it was still just two people, live on television, colliding over something deceptively simple. Who gets to finish speaking? And now it's your turn. What did you see in that moment? Was George Clooney right to draw the line? Did Joy Behar push too hard? Or was she doing exactly what she's paid to do? Did this confrontation expose a deeper problem with how conversations are handled on live TV? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it, respectfully. And if you want more explosive cinematic stories like this, moments where celebrities drop the script and reality breaks through, subscribe to Talk Flair right now. Hit like, share this story, and stay tuned, because the next moment is always just one interruption away.